Greetings, this is the Questing GM, and this is RPG Day 2020, day number 23. And the word of the day is edge. This is something that I've actually noticed for quite a while, reminded of in a recent D&D session that I had with my group. This is probably typical behavior of the players that I meet, but I can't speak for if it applies to most people around the world. Is that the players will always try to find the edge. An edge out of everything, out of any monster or opponent or any even situations that you can throw at them, through a very tireless exercise of negotiations and even corner cutting, bargaining, and even sometimes just outright begging from their GMs when they are put into a situation that they find challenging, they find they may not have the resources to deal with, or are not confident. That was quite simply the case for what I experienced very recently. That's a very funny thing, because when I was designing an encounter, which was quite simply just a combat with a dragon, and my players, for context, were about 14th level. So in D&D terms, that's actually not entirely too challenging of encounter for the players to handle, and I was actually pretty confident they would actually be able to get through it, with what they have. But during the start of the session, my players were just trying to get every kind of edge they could possibly get from me as the GM. They will ask for magic items which would conceivably be not in the area that they are in. They would ask for if there was any sort of meta game knowledge that I could impart on them. When I had to try to nicely say no, they would say that, but we are fighting a dragon. You're not giving us a fair chance to deal with it. And I myself, knowing full well that they were capable, and in fact maybe even more so capable than dealing with the dragon at what the current power level they will be. But I think it just taps into some sort of innate fear or lack of courage, and in players when they believe they are put into a situation that the GM is not being fair to, and therefore they would use every means that they can get to get an edge. And this is not the first time I've encountered this. I've been in many similar situations and many similar encounters. When I throw my players something, the first means of getting through it is to try to find an edge. In some ways, it comes off as a little strange to me. Maybe because sometimes role-playing games doesn't seem to have a very strong perimeter of what are the players capable of. And maybe this is something that even players are not aware of when they're learning rules of a game, and when they're playing it, and you're not aware that there are some perimeters to what you're capable of and what should be fairly thrown against them. This is a whole talk about game balance and all that, but this is not going to be the video about that. And I guess maybe part of that is the lack of understanding of the rules, of understanding of mechanics. So this is something that maybe as a GM and maybe as a player you would probably want to improve on, assuming the fact that it's a system that has those fail-safe mechanics built into it. Obviously, there's some RPGs that are not built with these lofty ideals of balance and nothing overpowering that will break the dynamics of the game. Maybe some doesn't even emphasize on those things. But I think even in more like role-playing situations, when it's a social interaction, when even the most simplest negotiation of hiring the adventurers to do something, the players instinctively want to find an edge. Like, can we get the best deal out of this? And in most cases, it probably involves screwing over the person to make a very bad deal, and even leveraging on their employer's desperation. Like, if you're not going to hire me, then no one's going to do the job for you, and therefore you should pay us more for what we're doing. There are definitely ways to handle this, but I feel it's very odd that this is always the first instinct of players to do. Some may say it's an alignment issue, like if a character is of a chaotic neutral alignment, that's going to be their favorite tactic. But this even happens to players who are supposedly playing like lawful good characters, and they even have their own means of justifying to get an edge over something that doesn't necessarily steer in the direction of their alignment. This is definitely something that I've noticed, and there may be some sort of psychological or behavioral explanation for all this, maybe in the context of RPG. And this is something, as a GM, I think it's a constant challenge, that sometimes when you think you have given something to your players that is good, that you think is good for them, or it's not in any way too endangering them, or for the sake of challenge, your players are going to try to negotiate for an edge out of this. And it can go very badly, because sometimes it's like, if you've given your players too much of an edge, then whatever encounter that you were giving the players has lost its meaning, lost its purpose, lost its tension, or maybe the edge that they were able to get out of you, and maybe very justifiably so, just bypasses an entire stretch of things that you've planned ahead, and now all of that is lost. Like, for example, the most typical example is they killed the BBEG right in the middle of the campaign. So what are you going to do now? Because you've lost your edge by giving them an edge. So yeah, this is something I think every GM probably experiences at some point, and different GMs definitely have different ways of handling this, some more heavy-handed than others. If there's any reason for making this video, is to remind myself and to remind other GMs out there that players are always going to find an edge, are always going to try to find an edge against you, whether for good or for ill. They only care about coming off on top with the least amount of inconvenience or even damage to them. That's something probably you really want to think ahead. Maybe even try to maneuver around, in some sense, like giving enough assurance to your players that they will not want to go find an edge against you, and therefore it saves you some problems. So I guess that'll be all for day 23 for RPG a day, and I'll be seeing you on day 24.